Welcome to the Center for Sports Studies podcast. My name is Brandon Podgorski, professor of sport management at Trine University, and I want to welcome you to this week's podcast. On today's podcast, I am joined by recent Trine alumnus and new coach of the Adrian College esports team, Ethan Hill. Ethan just wrapped up his college esports career as a Call of Duty player, and in this episode, he discusses his transition from player to coach. He also shares his perspective on the rise of college esports, the difficulties in governing the different games, and how students can begin a career in the industry. I hope you enjoy the show. So joining us today on the Center for Sports Studies podcast, one of my former students, which always makes this really exciting, and a recent Trine sport management grad, and now head coach of the Adrian esports team, Ethan Hill. Ethan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, always excited to have one of our distinguished alumni here. You were an esport athlete here at Trine, and not only that, but you were also on the National Collegiate Sports Sales team, which did very, very well this past year. So remarkable to see just the things that our alumni do, and going into a spot there at Adrian where I know they're growing their esports program. So how did this position come about to where you are now the new head coach?
So one of my friends who's actually the head track coach, Ty Hoover, who is class of 22 at Trine University, he just sent me a link one day. It's like, hey, I know you're still looking for a job. Have you ever thought about getting back into esports? And shoot, why not? I spent 3 years when I was looking for a school to transfer to back in 2020. One of the big selling points for Trine, for me personally, was its esports program. And it was kind of a match made in heaven, being able to be a part of a competitive environment and also combining my love for video games. It was awesome. But he sent me the link, and I wasn't entirely sure if this was necessarily the route that I wanted to go down, in all honesty, but I figured, anything worth doing is worth overdoing. So I pulled out every trick, every piece of information that I've been able to retain over my time with Trine, and put forth the best presentation, best plan, and here I am.
Spoken like a true KSB student there. And I wouldn't say it's tricks, it's preparation, like you said. And that's a big thing for students to hear on this. Whether you're going into an interview for an internship, for a job, full-time, part-time, whatever it would be, employers want to know that you know something about them. And obviously you did a really nice job of that and impressing Adrian with your knowledge. But I mean, like you said, you've got a background in esports, having done esports here at Trine. So how do you think your background has prepared you now to go into coaching?
I think I think the biggest thing is knowing knowing what I wanted to have, what I wanted to do for Trine's program, and wasn't in the position to do. So now I kind of have that. I was a captain for 3 years, so I was in all of the meetings. I know how most teams are supposed to run. I can't say that I can coach every single team, but this is, I think my position is less about coaching and more about managing and supporting each team in the best, based off of what their needs are, whether it's finding a coach or finding them opportunities to travel and really add value to their time here. My expertise is in Call of Duty, so that will be the team that when we kind of start practicing, that would be the team that I associate closest with. But like I told the athletic committee during my interview, it's my options are I either find a coach, or I spend all of my free time studying these games and learning all the strategies that I possibly can, and figure out how I can best coach and and support and provide that extra eye.
We bring up something interesting that excuse me, I don't know if a lot of people understand, esports, it's not just one game, right? There's different games and in different categories that you're playing. So kind of break that down for us. You said Call of Duty is your expertise, but there's other types of tournaments and opportunities for these students to get involved in. So what does that look like? If somebody who has no idea about esports hears, yeah, I've got an esports tournament this weekend, what does that look like to the layperson?
So it's a little tricky because each game there's not a centralized rule system or any centralized guidelines. Each league kind of operates a little differently. Kind of breaking that question into parts. So the titles that Adrian offers is CS:GO, Overwatch, League of Legends, Call of Duty, Apex Legends, Valorant, 2K, Madden, and there's one more I'm forgetting. Rainbow Six Siege.
Okay.
Sorry, my phone just went off.
Okay.
There are others out there, but those are the most popular titles that have collegiate leagues and collegiate tournaments and have shown the most amount of growth. As far as tournaments go, it does kind of vary by game. I can speak personally from Call of Duty. So the league that we played in was the CCL, the Collegiate Call of Duty League, started, I believe, back in 2017. And they run a national national league. So you could be playing someone that is across the country in California or in Canada. But where people start to have issues is because there is such a wide variety of school. I think this past year they had 250 teams.
Wow.
Across the entire league, and those are from D1 to D3 to actually to community colleges. What some teams have figured out is that you can essentially pick up pro players because there's no rule system against if you've ever touched the pro scene. Mm-hmm. You're still allowed to come back to college because it's not sanctioned by the NCAA. So most of the dominant schools in collegiate Call of Duty are D2 and NIA because they bought in right away and started offering full ride scholarships to former pros, to high challenger players. Really flying kids across the country overnight and building these super teams out of nowhere.
So let me interject because the NCAA doesn't look over this. It doesn't sound like there's like a standardized rule. So theoretically, could you still be a pro player, but I'm enrolled in, D2, NAIA college, whatever it is, and still participate for that school? Or are there rules against that?
No, there are no rules. There are two specific occurrences that I can add. So there was a player, I don't know his last name, so we'll just go by gamer tags. His name was Dan Ghosty, or Ghosty was his tag game. He played for Illinois, but he was also picked up by the Boston Breach Academy team, which is a pro Call of Duty team. So he was on their amateur team. They're all on salary. They fly him to every single event. I believe there's 8 every year. So while he's playing for the Breach, he was also playing for the CCL. But the difference is he was allowed to play, but he just chose not to because he played when he wanted to or when he had time.
Okay.
Because when you're at that high of a level, it's like an NFL wide receiver playing with a JV team or
Wow.
playing with a JV high school team.
So the
There's
games,
you're
well,
not gaining that much from it.
wow. So the games themselves, it sounds like the individual games are kind of have their own governance. Would that be fair to say?
Not just they're I think almost every single title has at least 4 to 5 collegiate leagues.
Oh,
And each
wow.
have there's overlapping rules and similarities, but each of them have their own governing bodies, their own board of directors, blah blah blah.
So how do you decide which league that you would want to get involved in? Like if you're a college president or athletic director listening to this and you know nothing about esports and you hear, oh my gosh, there's all these options. There's like 4 options for Call of Duty. Is there kind of a tiered system? Like, hey, this one is kind of the standard bearer, or does cost play into it, travel play into it? How does that work?
I mean, really all of the above. I think it's you definitely have to weigh the options and see what's going to be best for your program. There are some leagues that do have buy-ins. Some are upwards as a $2,000 yearly membership, but that will typically give you access to there's some leagues that have membership fees, but it gives you access to like 5 titles.
Okay.
Um, um, but there's cost. Travel hasn't necessarily picked up yet. That is a relatively new thing. Um, it's I think kind of the biggest thing was really just exposure and kind of the prize at the end, because most leagues do have some sort of a financial reward
Okay.
for winning the whole thing.
So I want to go back to you were talking about being a pro, and I know you've played at the collegiate level. I don't think you've played in any pro tournaments, at least not that I know of, right? Okay.
No, I was never that good.
Okay. So I mean, how do you get the, or maybe not how you get that good, but let's say once you get to that pro level, like what does that look like? I mean, what does the practice look like and the training? How many hours a day? I mean, how do you get, because I know you're a good Call of Duty player, but to make that next level, what's that look like?
Um, so during the most that I ever played in a day, and it's kind of making me sick thinking about it. Um, I think the short days were the days that I spent 4 hours in the lab.
Okay.
There were some weekends where I'd wake up I'd wake up around 9 or 10, have lunch, and then I'd be in the lab until 1, and I wouldn't leave until 2 a.m.
Yeah, we're saying like 1 in the morning, not just like 12 to 1 p.m.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah. No, that it was kind of the same for any sport. I mean, it's something that takes an incredible amount of repetition and
Mhm.
practice, because it is precision. It's not just knowing the strategy, it's being able to execute with an insane amount of precision. There are players that are truly so mechanically talented that they look like they're cheating.
Wow.
Like they understand some there I there was a player at Trine. His name was Jarrett Zollner. He ended up transferring because he got offered a scholarship to Cumberland University. Um, when we would play, we'd break up the teams and we'd scrim each other. There'd be times where I think that he knew where I was before I knew where I was. It was absolutely unreal. Um, but I think to kind of get back to your question, the practice, it is every single day.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very rigorous practice schedule, and I think some people kind of get lost in the fact that you're just sitting down and looking at a screen, but it is a lot. It's a lot of stimulation. I can speak for myself. My hands hurt all the time. I don't know if that's a genetic thing, but I don't think I helped it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just it looks different than your average sport. I think your average pro is probably putting in 6 to 8 hours a day.
Mm-hmm. Well, it kind of goes back to a few years ago. I took some students to Indianapolis for a career fair with the Pacers, and we got to visit with their 2K team. And it was really unbelievable. I mean, the size of the room that they had, and you have five guys, manipulating their own individual player on the court. So I know, we could talk about Call of Duty and other things like that, but for NBA 2K, I mean, you actually had to know something about basketball, about spacing and where to go. And then they were playing a team out of Detroit, so you got that aspect of it. But the room was huge. It was set up for them. They're in there, they're practicing, like you said, 8 hours a day or something together. But they also have access to the Pacers training facilities, physical therapists, mental health, nutrition, all that stuff. I think they train and had a season like 6 months out of the year. And they got paid somewhere around $30,000 a year with full health benefits. Now, that's not a ton of money, but I'm assuming, if you're a pro, you've got other opportunities that go along with that. And I know, I think you have to be a 99 rating for 2K to get drafted, and there's a whole process there. So I was just amazed at the different careers available in esports. So maybe talk about that a little bit. I mean, obviously you could be a professional and you could play and actually, be the person in the game, but what other careers are out there if you had just kind of your generic sport management student or like, I want to work in esport. I'm not good enough to be a professional. What else could I do?
Great question. So there's first you have your coach, you have your coaches, you have your directors. There is something that we call VOD review, or basically that person is just helps out with making sure that each person's POV is recorded, and then they go over. They'll clip stuff out. They'll like they know they really know the game, and they know what to look for, and like, oh, that is something that we need to work on.
So like a
So
film coordinator in
yeah,
basketball or something. Wow. Okay.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, I can list a few more, but that's something that's really important. Something that I really want to kind of convey is that though esports is it looks like it's in its own, it's kind of in its own thing. It is truly just like any other sport. The opportunities are we need commentators, we need broadcasters, we have content creators, um, brands. I'm blanking on the word, but people that are good with working and connecting with brands and sponsorships.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just like it would just like be if you were a part of a professional basketball program.
Well, when you
It's
see these big tournaments in these huge arenas, I mean, like to your point, you need somebody to sell those tickets and advertise those media rights and to commentate. So, I think there's paths there for sport management students to get involved, even if you're not good enough to play pro.
Mhm. I think that it's still where esports stands. It's still niche enough that a lot of um, those positions either get filled for free just because people are willing to are willing to put forth that product to gain experience and
Mm-hmm.
to gain that recognition. I mean, there's a lot of casters that they do a lot of freelance work or relatively cheap work just because it's they just keep on getting their name out there. Um, Oh, I had something else and I lost my train of thought.
Well, when you say casters, are these the people who are putting out the video like on Twitch and things like that?
No, they're
Or
play by play,
play by
color
play. Okay.
commentary. Yeah.
Okay. Um, so how would you get involved? Let's go with that, because I know commentary is a big part. Because I think, and please push back on me if I'm wrong about this, but I think part of the popularity in esports has been the fact that you can put yourself out there again, whether it be on Twitch or social media or whatever, and show clips of yourself playing and just how you've progressed or how good you are. You know, if you wanted to get into that digital content, commentary, casting, whatever it would be, how would you do it? Do you need special education or skills, or is it just kind of experience?
No, if you want to get into it, you start doing it.
Okay.
Um, that is that's my advice, and that's been the advice for the past 15 years. If you there is no right or wrong way to do it. Of course, there's going to be classes. You can go to school, you can get certifications, you can watch YouTube videos um, on how the best routes to take for becoming a Twitch streamer. Or at the end of the day, it is finding something that you're passionate about and doing it every single day, getting better and better and better until someone is willing to pay for it.
Well, that's great advice. I mean, just like anything else in life. So,
Yeah.
um, so I know you just started as a coach there at Adrian, but I don't know if people realize just how big esports has gotten on the college scene. Like you said, you can now get a full scholarship to go and participate in esports. And again, it's not sanctioned by the NCAA. So there may be more money. You could go to a D2 or D3 and get a scholarship for esports, a full scholarship, because it's not under that NCAA umbrella. So as a coach, how do you recruit to the esport team? Like, I know when I coach basketball, every Friday night I'm at a high school basketball game and I can see it right in front of me. Like, how does it work for esports? Are there tournaments that you know of that you're watching, or kids sending you things? How does that work?
Awesome question. So there are there's so many various ways. So first there are high school leagues over the next few months I will be I've already reached out to a few high school leagues, but going around and finding high schools in Michigan, in Ohio, and Indiana, and finding kids that are interested in a career in collegiate esports, and coming to school, and being a student athlete. Um, so looking in person high schools, going and recruiting there. Then there are also websites, the NFCA. I don't know who are all the schools and divisions that have access to that, but that is one of the methods that Adrian uses for its recruitment, for all sports. And they've recently added esports, so people are adding like their Valorant profiles, their Overwatch profiles, and it's really neat because I can just add them to a list and then send them an email if they have their phone number. It's been known that that texting typically has a better yield than sending an email. As far I currently have D3 currently has a big disadvantage because most schools are still, even though that it's not sanctioned by the NCAA, it's still, most schools are like Adrian are really trying to play it safe with following those NCAA Division III rules.
Okay.
Because let's say if I was offering someone a 50% scholarship to come play esports, and so say they play for a year or two and then the NCAA sanctions it, how do you think they or their parents are going to feel when they say, hey, sorry, can't offer you a scholarship. We appreciate everything you've done. We hope you keep on playing, but you have to pay that full price now.
It's a great point.
That it makes it super sticky, and there are other ways that we are able to provide value through experience, through travel, making sure our equipment is tip top. Just keep on investing in the program. And then another thing that I'm going to be working on is trying to bring in sponsors so that we can. I still have to kind of really make sure I know my D3 rule or my NCAA rules, but trying to see if we can find brands that won't just sponsor the program, but maybe will sponsor a specific team, a specific roster, so we can have kind of an NIL deal of sorts set up. So it's Steel Series makes keyboards and peripherals, so we can have Steel Series sponsored athletes. But that is something that I'm trying to work out with admissions and see if it's even legal, and then moving forward with reaching out to sponsors.
Well, you touched on something. I think we're probably close to an arms race in esport here in college. Like, if a college wants to invest in this, and we're just saying generic college, I'm not saying Trine or Adrian or anything like that. Like, what is it that they need? Because I know here at Trine, we've got a great esports room, but here after like 3 or 4 years, I think we've already outgrown it. And now we're looking at, possibly, there's scuttlebutt. Maybe we need an arena, or, maybe we need to add on whatever it would be, just because of the popularity of the program. So, your college, you want to get into esports, you go into the board meeting and you say, hey, this is what you need if you want to have a good competitive program that kids want to come to.
I think for starters, it's just computers. I had a meeting with a company called Game Arena, who hosts tournaments and also hosts the GLEC conference that Trine, Albion, and hopefully Adrian will be a part of soon. But what they were talking about was how they've helped build programs essentially from nothing. There were schools that reached out and say, hey, we want a program, but we don't know what we're doing. And starting at the bare minimum with a lab, you want to make sure that whatever you're investing in, you're not going to have to then spend even more money trying to either buy yourself out of a contract or upgrading your computers. You don't want to buy a car with 200,000 miles and then have to turn around and spend how much on fixing a transmission or however much it would take to repair it, because it's just not up to date. It did its job. It will do its job for a period of time, but what's the quality of that experience? There's computers, there's quality of your peripherals, so your mouse, your keyboard, your headset. There's I mean there's chairs, but I mean that's kind of less. Having a lab is an excellent start. I think something that kind of what elevates it is giving people the opportunity to view in person. Having what Trine's currently working on with building an arena. Some people would say, well, what is this for? Who even watches esports? A lot of people. And being able to be there in person, see the passion that you can't see on screen, that's an extra element that kind of legitimizes the viewing experience and the sport itself.
Well, and it's something I think it's hard for maybe people of my generation, kind of being in Generation X, to maybe kind of understand, and beyond, right? And older, to kind of understand, like, well, why would anybody want to come and watch video games? Well, I mean, when you start to look at the viewership habits here in the United States, I saw one report where esports is the second most watched sport in the United States. And I don't think it does us any good to get hung up on, well, is esports a sport or not? I don't think it matters. There's a ton of people watching it. It's bringing in billions of dollars worldwide. If you're not getting on this train, it's going to leave you behind. And, for colleges, we're seeing decreased enrollment over the past decade. This is a great way to get students engaged. And it's something I would say probably a majority of high schoolers or middle schoolers are involved in. Maybe they don't ever want to play pro or they can't get to that level, but shoot, to play esports for 4 years in college, get a little bit of money. I mean, why not? And if all we need are just some computers and, we kind of grow it from there and get better headsets and better chairs and make it nicer. It seems like a minimal investment to get and retain students, at least in my point of view.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you had any advice as we wrap up here, if you have any advice for students who want to break into esports, and I know there's a lot of areas to break into esports, like what are some of the things that they need to be doing now? If one of our students here at Trine is listening, what would you go back and recommend that they need to do to hopefully get to a level like you where they're coaching?
Get involved in any way you can. If you're not interested in playing, reach out. Director Malone is an awesome person to work with. He's always looking for help, and I know that it's a great program to get started with. There's really no advice besides just if you want it, go for it. I don't think there's anything crazier than that. It's just make sure that you know your stuff. That's really it. Take care of your responsibilities outside. I know I didn't, but make sure that you're kind of taking care of the whole picture, and give options for yourself.
You did what you needed to do.
I did what I needed to do.
And here you are now. Now you're crazy successful. Well, Ethan, if anybody wanted to find out more about you and the Adrian Esports program, and I'll put a plug in for the Trine Esports program, is there somewhere where they could go, where they could find out, whether on social media or anywhere else?
I would just be Adrian's athletic page. They have esports on there. My email or phone number. I think my phone number is on there as well. That's how if you want to get in touch, that's where I am.
Perfect. So the Adrian College Bulldogs, and I think if you probably go to our athletics website here at Trine, you can find information on Trine too. So tons of opportunities out there to get involved in esports. And as a distinguished KSB alum, we appreciate you being on the podcast, and all the best to you this season.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. Be sure to check out our next episode on September 15th as we welcome the Facility Operations Coordinator from the Indiana Pacers, Aaron Magnuson. As always, we'd like to say a special thank you to our producer, Josh Hornbacher, for his work behind the scenes. This is the Center for Sports Studies podcast, broadcasting from the Trine Broadcasting Network. If you like this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the Center for Sports Studies podcast on your favorite podcasting platform and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you heard. For more information about the Center for Sports Studies, please visit trine.edu. Also, be sure to like the Trine Center for Sports Studies on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Trine CSS, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.